Hello there and welcome back to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast with your hosts Laz Michaelides and Felipe Amorim. Felipe, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are doing great.
Excellent stuff.
How are you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you, man. Yeah, we've actually we've both just got, I mean, everyone knows that we record episodes in advance, and we've both just celebrated our birthdays over the last couple of weeks, haven't we? So
Yeah,
happy birthday
exactly.
to you, happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're back for another album episode, and this week we are doing the renowned Absolution by Muse. So as usual, I'll give you some of the facts. The album was released on the 15th of September 2003, recorded September 2003 to 2002 to June 2003. That's a long process. Now, the main studio it was recorded in was the Grouse Lodge in Ireland, but they also did parts elsewhere, like in Ayr, London, Livingstone Studios in London, and Cello Studios in LA. The genre of the album, now this is, I'm sure, will be a topic for debate today, but some genres used would be alt rock, so alternative rock, progressive rock, art rock, and hard rock. The album clocks in at 52 minutes long. The label was Taste, and the producers were Muse, John Cornfield, Rich Costey, and Paul Reeve. The only other part of my information is the singles, which I thought would be a really cool thing to sort of get started with.
I want to know, because I intentionally didn't look at that piece of information, because I didn't want to be biased in terms of choosing my favorite songs, which we're going to discuss.
Okay, cool.
So which are the singles?
So there was a lot of singles. That's the point that I was making.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
And check out when they were released, okay? Now, I think as far as PR and marketing goes, this is how you sell an album. So, album came out 15th of September 2003, all right? First single, Stockholm Syndrome, 14th of July. Next single, Time Is Running Out, 8th of September, 1 week before the release. Next single, Hysteria, 1st of December, 6 weeks after the release. Sing for Absolution next year, 17th of May. Apocalypse Please, 23rd of August. And Butterflies and Hurricanes, 20th of September. Now that is how you sell an album. You just release one single every 6 weeks for a year.
It's amazing, isn't it? That was like the great marketing strategy, wasn't it? When you think about it, I think it kind of reminds me of the way things were when the Beatles were releasing their hits. You know,
just song after song.
I think I started to notice that when streaming became a thing, that people were going back to songs rather than albums.
Yeah,
you know, I think the timing of that reflects this situation. Yeah,
that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, is there any particular topics you wanted to sort of touch on? I just have the usual stuff: the background of the recording, key points of the album, how it affected Muse's career. But is there any sort of particular thing that you wanted to touch on?
Well, the thing is, it's always like order and chaos, isn't it? You have everything organized in a list.
Love it.
I do have my notes, but they're all over the place. No, I do have questions for you, right?
When do you want to ask them? Do you want to ask them now or later?
I want to ask them now. Why not?
Go for it. Why
not?
Let's
break with
shake
your whole
things up a
structure.
bit,
You know, yeah. You have a structure, I don't. No, actually, so here are my questions for last. Yeah. Because what we do is we pick an album each, isn't it? I've picked the last one, you picked this one, and that's how we do. So we are like encouraging each other to listen to stuff that we're not familiar with.
Exactly.
And that's the whole point of the show. So you guys can get in touch with an album you never heard of, or you can hear a little bit more about an album that you are already a fan of. Well, number one question would be simple. Like this was that third album, and they were kind of doing well, but still kind of playing theaters. And the documentary I know you watched and I watched, they joking about, what's the next step for you? They say, arenas. And they laugh about it because as if they didn't believe that. Were the arena gigs like actually the next step? Did they come after this album? I believe they did. The question is, why this album? Why did you pick this album out of the, that whole discography?
That's interesting. I mean, the first and obvious answer for me is that it's my favorite album of theirs. It's got most of the songs I like. So kind of that, personally for me, that's obvious. But in terms of why I picked it out of any of the ones I could have chosen for Muse, this is the one that, as you alluded to, Felipe, alleviated them to the higher successes. Now, we're going to get into the nitty gritty stuff of the songs and analyze why. But my thinking is this: their first album, Showbiz, had quite a heavy sound to it. Origin of Symmetry, the second album, refined that sound and started adding in some of the elements we see predominantly at play in Absolution. But what Absolution did was perfectly amalgamate them. It's like
like a consolidation of what they were looking
exactly
for.
what you got hints of in Origin of Symmetry was much more obvious in Absolution, but it was executed better, in my opinion. That's not saying it's a better album. I'm just saying the characteristics and the genealogy of the music within Absolution, I think it's just done fantastically.
All right, that's a that's a really, really good reason for it.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I understand that as like every band's looking for a sound, and some of them, they manage to find that sound that defines them on the first album, which I think is kind of a tragedy.
Well, because it doesn't get better than that, does it? It only gets worse.
Exactly. So with them, maybe it's like they were looking for something, they found it by the third album. I actually believe that some bands, they achieve their best when they're not trying to do anything conventional, because whenever there's like money involved, and there's a lot of money involved in an album like this, there's pressure to produce something that is commercially viable, and people are going to actually spend money on it, and it's going to sell out venues and arenas and stuff. And what if you're trying to do something that you haven't done before, and you got no clue about how it's going to end? And if you hear their own comments about songs, they were like, well, some songs we thought would be a hit ended up becoming something there's not even a B-side, or ended up being discarded from the album completely.
I remember that in the documentary. Yeah, they were like songs that they thought were going to be the best one actually never made it. Just goes to show how you can evolve during a recording process, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's a couple of more questions for you. Do you think 15 songs is like too many songs for a rock album?
Yes, I do. And there's two songs on this album that I'd say for me don't entirely fit the overall sound. Why not? I'll just say them now. So track 11 and track 14. Hold on, how many, you got 15 as well? Because I was on a few pages and some of them only have 14. The song Fury isn't on some of the albums.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
It's weird, yeah. It's not on some listings.
I went for the original. Well, I think I went for kind of I think it's the original release, or
well, no, you're right, because I've got 15 as well.
And also you have an intro song that might not be listed,
and an
as
interlude.
A song. It might be, exactly. Yeah. So
but still, your point remains. For me, the songs "The Small Print" and "Thoughts of a Dying Atheist," these are great songs, but there is something to me that is almost a bit too simplistic about them compared to the rest of the album. They are just kind of straight hard rock. Let's get into the songs, yeah? We've taken this avenue. So the song...
No, come on, I still have one question. No, one question.
Okay, all right, go on.
My last question. Yeah,
go for it.
You're breaking with my structure here, man.
Sorry, yeah. Go on.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most remarkable aspect of their style? What makes Muse Muse? And is it like this album that actually brought this aspect to their style?
That's a really great question, and the answer for me would be the fact that they have a signature sound, but that signature sound comes as a result of blending styles. Now, if you listen to a song, and I give the reminder to the audience every time, any song we mention in the episode, guys, is going to be in the playlist, which you can find at the bottom of the show notes. So if you're in YouTube, it's in the description if you're seeing our lovely faces, or if you're listening to avoid our lovely faces, then it's going to be in the show notes of your podcast provider. But yeah, so the playlist is in there for you to have a listen to the album and any songs we mention. The song Death on Two Legs by Queen from their 73 album, I think it is, Sheer Heart Attack. That was a fantastic example of fusing elements of heavy metal and classical music.
Mm-hmm.
You had Freddie Mercury on the piano at the start, doing some very sort of classical orientated, virtuosic piano playing. And then you get these really dark Brian May riffs in. And I thought when I heard that, I was like, this is great because you're literally getting two opposing styles. Whilst I think heavy metal and classical music in many ways are related,
Yeah.
in terms of what actually goes to your ears, they aren't. So with that being said, Muse do that fantastically. I think they have really heavy elements of their music. So much so that you would call some of their riffs heavy metal, in my opinion. Yet you also have that fantastic classical aspect of it, and it can all happen in the same song.
Yeah,
it can all happen in the same song, and on top of that, you might have an atmospheric electronic sound going on in the background. I just think what some bands don't achieve by trying to mix electro and hard rock or classical and hard rock, Muse have achieved in this album by mixing classical, heavy metal, electro, and hard rock. That's what I just think I think they've done it amazingly.
Well, I think that is a result of their curiosity, isn't it? They're like, well, does this sound good? Shall we try this? Or like, shall we place a bass drum by a swimming pool and just hit it really hard? Like
Yeah,
they actually did that.
they
Or
did.
set up the drum kit outside the studio and record it, So imagine how much like wind and all like background noise you have bleeding into the drum microphones and stuff. But they went for that kind of experience with sounds, and that's definitely something that I haven't seen in that level in a while. I mean, I didn't know how they made this album. It wasn't, so when I checked it out, I was like, oh, that's actually really cool. That's the kind of stuff, again, to mention Queen, that's the kind of stuff they used to do back in the day.
I remember we were talking about when we were in Brazil recording, we set up microphones around your drums, but we set them up. Do you remember we took the leads across the hallway, all the way down the hall and down the stairs, and we recorded the drum sound from how it would sound if you were downstairs of the room we were in, because that's what John Bonham did
like Led Zeppelin
when the levee breaks.
That was a sound engineer's idea, I guess. But the whole thing is, you do those things in order to get like, if you want some reverb, why not use the room around you instead of doing what we call the plugins, and which most producers do nowadays. That you want your guitar to sound like as if you're in a big room. You just press this button and sounds like that.
Let me download
but why
this
don't
plugin.
You bring your amp to a big room and use that sound? Why not? I think that's part of how you traditionally do rock music. I'm with you in regards to mixing classical, electronic, and rock band and rock ensemble and make it sound good, because I think it's such a dangerous mix. I mean, very often, forgive my French, very often it turns to shit when people do that. It's a recipe for disaster, but they did it so well.
I think, songs like, hold on, where are my notes? Which one is it where it goes? Butterflies and Hurricanes.
Yeah.
How literally 3/4 of the way into the song it stops, and you have between that point and the end it's almost a classical piece of music that's been composed, each note chosen meticulously, carefully by Matt Bellamy. I don't feel like, unless it's something unusual like Frank Zappa, I feel like I've never heard genres just change so quickly, but it still flows. And that's what they've achieved so well, in my opinion, in this album, is that for all the changes and for all the sections that just go one into another, this is like a hard rock heavy metal part, let's stop it now, let's go to a classical part. You never feel like the immersion of the album disappears, do you?
No, it never does. And the other thing about the classical elements in it, because they actually went full on classical. And what I mean by that is like bands like Deep Purple, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Yes, in the 60s and 70s, they have used pieces of classical music as part of the solos and melodies and structures, but played in a normal rock setup, like, you know, guitar,
Yeah.
bass, keyboards, stuff. What they actually did is like, let's not use too much guitar, and maybe we can have more piano and strings. So when they came up with classical phrases and ideas, they actually orchestrated it in a classical way with proper classical instruments. And there's probably, I don't know the other albums that well, but probably more piano in this album as opposed to guitar oriented stuff. And
The
it's
first
like,
two albums were more guitar heavy. You're right. Yeah.
yeah, and then it sounds to me like they leaving to the bass player to be the noisy one in the band, because you have distorted bass all the time, which is a big characteristic of their sound, I guess. And so it's like the bass takes the place of the guitar, the lead guitar, and then you just like use classical elements whenever they get the chance.
That's a great point. Ritchie Blackmore was notorious for having this love for classicism. I don't know the term. Yeah, he loved classical music, and you can hear it in his solos. Now, don't get me wrong, Ritchie Blackmore has many solos where he sort of makes it bluesy, but you can hear the classical elements in his playing, and more so in his work with Rainbow. Songs like Stargazer, you can hear the classical elements of his soloing in there. But what you've said is correct. It's that they haven't, and what we were talking about when I'm talking about Ritchie Blackmore's classical playing isn't that he's put in a part of the solo which is like dun 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 dun. You know, he's not copying
Spinal
phrases.
Tap did that.
he's not copying phrases from classical music, but he's using scales, he's using arpeggios to the extent classical musicians would when they're soloing, phrases, you know, in a descending scale, whereas blues musicians wouldn't play scales, they more play pentatonics, which is a scale but you remove some of the notes, etc. You know, I'm not going to get too technical, but blues, it's way more about the feel. Classical, it's way more about the notes, and Ritchie Blackmore had that within him. But Muse,
but playing electric guitar, not playing that on the piano.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing.
But Muse have explicitly, they haven't taken classical melodies, motifs, passages, just like I said, and applied it to their instruments. They've gone all out with the classical sound, and a big part of that is the strings. And we want to talk about the strings. Do you want to kick off on that?
Well, yeah, one thing we need to say about the strings, we were fortunate enough to meet the person who actually arranged and conducted the orchestra.
Well, hold on. You say meet. I had lessons with her. I had a whole term of lessons with her. Yeah.
Well,
so
I had one semester. I think one of the things we did at Music University, I don't remember which subject it was.
It was arranging.
I think arranging and composing. Yes.
That's it, yeah. So we were lucky enough, as Felipe said, we were lucky enough to have Audrey Riley, who is she plays cello on this album, and she did all the arranging for the strings. We were taught by her about arranging and about composing and about writing for strings. Now, if I remember correctly, one of our tasks for Audrey was we had to take a song we liked and we had to arrange it for a 4-part string quartet, which was amazing. And I remember mine wasn't very good, but I remember handing it back to her and all the notes she did and saying, oh, why don't you go to this note here? You've put the cello here, but swap it with this. And I remember just thinking, like, my God, her knowledge of those instruments is incredible. And you hear it fantastically on this album, don't you? The strings make the album.
How many classical musicians, composers, arrangers actually know how to work with a rock band? What normally happens when a band wants a classical arranger, composer, or instrumentalist to be part of an album, the record label would appoint someone, isn't it? Isn't it the normal thing? So they say to the producer, like, oh, we want some strings in this on this part of the song, and the label would find someone who can do that job and commission someone. It's like it's a freelance job, and it happens a lot in the music industry.
Yeah.
But with Muse and some other bands that collaborated with Audrey, they wanted her specifically. So I know this person, I know she's good, and I want her personality into my song. So it's like you have the classical part of the album represented by one person that is acting like a member of the band. And we know how passionate she is about understanding the lyrics and the feeling behind the songwriting. and then trying to bring that into the orchestra or the strings quartet or whatever you have.
She told us that, didn't she?
Yeah, and I think it's essential that you have that sort of communication, that the classical part of the album is not randomly put together with a rock band because it sounds cool.
Yeah,
and there's meaning to it. Yeah,
exactly. Perfect. Well, this is a nice way to segue into the themes of the album and the lyrics, I think, because with that we can also talk about the electronic stuff. So thematically, this album is quite doom and gloom, isn't it? It's like, I mean, the first song is called Apocalypse Please. That kind of sets the tone, doesn't it? Yeah, lyrically, this album, from my understanding, was meant to be it was going to be a concept album. But then something changed, and that was the Iraq War. And the Iraq War beginning, this made Muse, or Matt Bellamy, if it was his lyrics, decide to avoid the way of a concept, because then I wonder if he thought, if I say this is a concept album, then they can't apply it to what's happening in the world, whereas I want them to know that what's happening in the world is influencing my lyrics. And so, I mean, the first song, Apocalypse Please, it's just theatrical, isn't it? In nature and performance, just this big smashing piano, the dun 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 dun. Declare this an emergency. Straight away, the first lyrics of the album, declare this an emergency. And I think from then on, the tone of the album is just, I don't think of a better word than apocalyptic.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've listened to this album with some. It made me think of some images of like you're literally walking around in a post-apocalyptic world, and everything is completely destroyed by a war or something. It feels to me like that, because and also it feels like, even when I was listening to this during daylight, like I was thinking of it as nighttime.
Yep.
It feels like it's always dark when you're listening to that album. That's what I felt when I listened to it.
That's
and
a great point.
Yeah, that's why I chose this picture here behind me, because it's you have the lights on them, but you can't see their faces, and it's all dark. And it's how I see the album and how I see their sound and this album specifically.
Well, that says to me that it's an atmospheric sound, isn't it? That they're going for an atmosphere and they're trying to create a certain sense or a certain feeling within the listener through the songs. And I think this goes on. I mean,
it does.
Even though
some of them, I think.
Yeah, and even though some of the songs have a lighter feeling to them, let's take the songs. Okay, Falling Away With You. Again, lyrically, it might not be pleasant, but musically, it's nice to hear. It's not all minor chords. It's not all dissonance. Like I said, the songs, The Small Print and Thoughts of a Dying Atheist, I'm not saying they're happy songs, but they're upbeat. Whereas the first 5 songs, man, firstly, I love the first 5 songs. Time Is Running Out might be one of my favorite rock songs of all time. I love it. I remember listening to that song, absolutely loving it. But what they do meticulously well, which is what I said to you about the about how they made how this elevated them to the next level, is that you've got songs like Time Is Running Out, where
I love that one.
It is dark and it is foreboding and it's distorted, but the chorus is so accessible. You can just sing it. It's anthemic. It's a radio chorus.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
With a bass, with a kind of there's a bass intro, which I'm not quite sure if it's a bass guitar or if it's a.
It is a bass, yeah. But he's got he's
sounds like a synth. It's so distorted.
No, yeah. So it's a bass guitar, and he's got an effect on it. He's got a pedal going underneath it, which I remember when we were at uni, we had to match that bass sound. That was one of our tasks, was to we were given the pedal.
Is that?
It was very difficult. We were given the pedal. We were told what each knob of the pedal does, and we had to figure it. And it was really cool, really tough as well. But yeah, atmosphere. The whole album seems foreboding, but lyrically, we start off pretty heavy with the apocalypse, Time Is Running Out, Sing for Absolution, Stockholm Syndrome. I know I'm just saying the names of the songs, but even the words in the titles tell you what it means. Stockholm syndrome. That's the syndrome of a
When you,
hostage.
yes, exactly. You know, so you're
When
kidnapped
someone's
by
taken,
someone, and
yeah,
then you started to kind of like that person. You feel like they're doing something good to
you
you.
start empathize. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But then as the album goes on, the seriousness of the lyrical content doesn't change, but it goes more from dread, apocalypse, bad stuff, way more through to like, well, what's the meaning of life?
yeah.
Existentialism, what's going on? You know, it's not all doom and gloom how it is at the
But I
start.
think here's the thing. It could be a concept album because of the atmosphere, but I think the lyrics are so vague in a good way that you can interpret them
Yeah,
according to your own background
yeah.
and
No
beliefs
set, yeah,
and
no set
ideologies. Yeah,
story.
yeah, exactly. It's like he doesn't name the characters. He doesn't say, "I'm thinking this. I'm telling this to that person, or I'm saying this to you, my listener." It's like it's vague, really
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another thing that delivers on the atmosphere front, I think, is the electronic sounds they have going all through the album. I think that they found this way of creating a fantastic soundscape using these synths, using keyboards to create this absolute. I mean, every song has some form of electronic instrumentation going on
Yeah,
behind it, whether that's programmed, whether it's a synth, whether it's keyboards. And but it's so tastefully done. And I think that at the back of your headphones, you've got the bass, drums, guitar, and vocals really obviously in the forefront, but then at the
yeah,
back, always there's just something electronic going on. And to me, that just completely immerses the listener into the atmosphere.
yeah. It does, and well put. That's exactly the feeling you get from it. It's like you get trapped in the album, and you can't skip a song, even if you don't think that's the best song in
Yeah,
the album. But it's
you're
like,
right.
no, I need to listen to the whole story, even though I don't understand what the story is all about.
Yeah.
It's you just get trapped in the atmosphere, and it felt to me like the album was shorter than it was almost an hour, isn't it? 57 minutes or something.
52 minutes. Yeah.
52 minutes. It felt to me like it was about 35. That's how good it is.
Yeah.
I've listened to it. It's
There
like,
you
is
go.
that it? Is that the end of it? And it's like, because it's I still want more, really good. One thing about you said about the choices of electronic stuff. I like the song Endlessly when they have the drums played with brushes, which is quite jazzy and old school drumming, and you have keyboards like very 80s in my opinion, rather than a guitar. So that's a weird combination that they've managed to put together really well without sounding like, oh, here's us just trying to be weird.
Well, I thought it had a very bossa jazzy vibe to it,
Yeah,
didn't it? Even
yeah,
just, like you said, the instrumentation, just the whole vibe of it, though, the syncopation in the hi-hat
yeah.
as well. There was another one that actually felt a bit like that. Do you know what it was? Do you know the song Blackout? It
Yes, yeah.
almost had a bit of
It's
an
another
Arabic,
one. It's
Middle
another
Eastern.
one. Yeah, it's a 6/8 groove for all you music connoisseurs. Is and it's played with brushes as well. It's such a mellow vibe, that one.
Yeah, I
And the
heard a bit.
strings are my favorite thing about this track specifically. It's beautiful.
The
Uh,
vocals to me it gave it almost a bit of an Arabic, a Middle Eastern thing, just
yeah,
those long droned vocal notes, mixed with, like you said, the brushes and stuff. Really
yeah.
atmospheric.
One strong characteristic of the vocals, and I don't know if it's only in this album, is like long notes. Like holding the notes,
Yeah, yeah,
making the most out of it. I
yeah.
think there's a lot of that, and I like it.
It's very good. Now, what other music? Like, did you have any other musical takeaways from this album? What worked overall? Forget what we were saying about the lyrics and the atmosphere. Specific musical stuff. Did anything stand
Oh,
out to you?
there's one thing I would say that it's like there's a vocal style that for me, you said you described at the beginning of the show, what is the Muse sound for you? And believe me or not, for me, it's the vocals.
Okay.
The lead vocals are usually for me the most remarkable thing about their sound, regardless of all the weirdness of arrangements and structures and all that stuff. Because I'm saying this because it sounds like he's imposing that vocal style over everything that's going on. Is like, I don't really care, that's how I sing.
It is intrusive, isn't it?
And it's like, I don't care if this is more jazzy or more electronic or more classical. I sing this way, and that's my thing, and that's how I'm going to do it. I mean, that's the impression I get. And I just want to make sure I get the actual reference. There's a song that I found quite punk at the beginning, which
I think it's
the small print.
Yeah.
There's the flams on snare and kick, right? Just want to get the right name. It's a really, really punk kind of intro, not as fast as most punk songs, but it could be kind of a Green Day sort of vibe. But then as soon as the vocal starts, you're like, oh, that's Muse.
Can I just add to that and say that Muse are at the back end. Muse just missed out on the Britpop battle between Blur, Oasis, Radiohead, and how
lucky are they? Seriously, they wouldn't be a part of that thing.
You're right. But this the small print reminded me of one of Radiohead's earlier songs, which are quite heavy, from the album called The Bends. So I'll put the song The Bends in, you guys can check it out. Just hear how rocky it is and how, but simplistic as well, just like those Radiohead songs in the early days. So I'll put that in the playlist. I want to talk to you two sets of musical takeaways that I've got from this. Number one, the dynamics of the album. Each song I just thought utilized dynamics fantastically. Let's look at it. Sing for Absolution, just how timid and quiet the verses are before the eruption of the chorus, and how loud all the instruments are, and not necessarily loud in terms of volume of the instruments, but how softly he sings in the verses compared to how much louder it is in the chorus. And for listeners who don't know, dynamics in music means how hard or how soft you play your instrument. And I think it just, again, adds to the atmosphere that we hear the wide range of dynamics. Time is running out. That intro is soft and quiet, and the first verses, and then you build up, bury it, and it kind of, but our time is, and then it's just all in, full on.
It's just to be careful if you're listening to this on headphones. Sometimes you bring it up because you're like, oh, it's really quiet, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it just explodes into your ears, and it's amazing.
That's right.
It can get quite loud.
The other musical thing I wanted to draw attention to was, now this might be a bit nerdy, but syncopation.
Here we go.
Syncopation. Now, for listeners who don't know, syncopation is when you play a note on the offbeat. So I'm going to give you an example in the context of the album, and I'll explain why I think it's important afterwards. Sing for Absolution, okay? So here's the riff. It goes, and I'll be on the beat. It goes dun 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 dun. So the main melody goes on the beat, but the bass syncopates. The bass goes like this: dum 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 dum, and you've got this contrast between the main melody and the bass. Yet somehow it works really well.
Unlike like disco or reggae or other styles that normally use that kind of stuff, you don't have that in rock music as often as they use it.
Hit the song Hysteria, syncopation in the verse hi-hats.
As I said,
it's a funk
disco
beat,
music has a lot of that.
And then there was one more, which was Endlessly, syncopation in the hi-hat, but we said it's kind of jazzy and bossa. Now, the reason that this stood out for me is because syncopation as a concept is what, as Felipe said, is what you hear in jazz, you hear it in funk and bossa, a lot of Latin music, a lot of disco, because syncopation can equal groove, and groove means you dance and you move and you're sort of, enjoying yourself. Syncopation is
sometimes you just don't want to be too groovy if you're in a rock band, isn't it?
Well, I was just going to say that syncopation, yeah, exactly. Syncopation is not a normal rock characteristic, because with rock music, we like to bang our heads on the beat, don't we?
Yeah.
This is what it
but
is.
What is rock and roll, us?
Rock and roll is musical freedom, Felipe. There you go. But you know, take a song like "Whole Lotta Love,"
Yeah, that's on the
on the
beat all
beat.
the time. Yeah.
And I just think that Muse have done this perfectly because they don't overdo it. They don't do it in every song, but when they do it, you've got the verses or the softer sections with all of the examples of syncopation I just gave you. Yet all the choruses, they come back in on the one and
Yeah.
bring the power back.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what's syncopation? Hysteria. But I want it now. And then they're all in. I want
Yeah.
it now. They're always on the
Yeah.
beat. Brilliant. I just thought it's so good just to utilize a tiny little musical, unrock like musical characteristic to bolster a song and just to give it another edge. I thought it was brilliant.
No, I think they do it really well. It's
Yeah.
all like really well thought. Is they're not doing things like by accident, you know.
No,
It's like it's
no.
clear. It's that, you know, there's a lot of thought into that. I have another question for you. Do you have
Okay.
like one or two favorite songs from the album?
Time is
I've
Running
got
Out
mine.
would have to be a number one.
Mm.
Then Sing for Absolution, and then tied in third place, Stockholm Syndrome and Apocalypse Please. I think the opening to the album is phenomenal. I think the atmosphere, the apocalyptic feel, the obvious hints, I say hints, the obvious classical music put in your face at the start of Apocalypse Please with those piano thumps. It's just brilliant. I think those the first fight, but then, you know, add to that Falling Away With You, and then look after that Hysteria. The whole first half of the album is phenomenal, but for me, those first four songs really,
Interesting.
really
Well,
make it
it's
good.
interesting that you're talking about the beginning of the album, but I normally get disappointed when an album has a great first song,
Yeah,
and the last song is just a filler. I
yeah.
really get this. But in this case, tell you what I think. Ruled by Secrecy is one of my top 3 songs in the album.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's really interesting. I wouldn't have
it,
guessed that for you.
for a couple of reasons. One, it brings some horror movie vibes. It's just like something's about to happen here, and the piano at the end, for me, sounds a lot like a tango. Believe me or not.
Okay.
Listen to it. I don't know what kind of what aspects of music theory can be mentioned to justify my opinion on this. Maybe it's just a drummer's opinion, but it does sound like a tango. You go and listen to it and
I've
give me
just
your
got the
opinion.
ending popping into my head. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I hear that. It's just
Tell me,
the
yeah.
rhythm. Yeah,
Last reacts. Let's do
yeah.
it.
No, it's just I think the rhythm and the feel of the drums, because the piano is playing a bit out of shape, but
Yeah.
the drums staying nice and straight on it. It
And
kind
it's
of provides a little
dramatic, and it's
contrast.
really dramatic. It's like, and in the end, they didn't leave any hope. It's just like, yeah, that's it. You know,
Yeah,
it's all dark and sad and miserable, and then
yeah.
that's the end of
You're going to hear it from the first notes, but the song really reminds me of
yeah.
one by Radiohead called "Everything in Its Right Place," which I'm putting
All
in the
right.
playlist right now for listeners. So check that one out. Again, I
Uh,
think Muse probably have have people like Radiohead to thank,
oh yeah.
because Radiohead. For those who aren't, did you know much about Radiohead? Because we've never
Not
discussed
really. I
them.
know a couple
No,
of albums. I think they're great.
yeah,
I don't know why I never got into them
well,
that much
they're
to listen, but
hard.
they're pretty good.
They're an acquired taste, I have to admit, and I love some of their songs, and I can't listen to others.
Yeah.
Radiohead were like the third main Britpop band after Blur and Oasis.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if that's entirely fair. There were loads of other bands, but my point is that of those that made a name for themselves, you had Blur and Oasis battling it out through the 90s, and Radiohead kind of came in towards the end of the 90s and put their mark in. But since then, what Radiohead have done, Radiohead have been an extremely experimental band, experimenting with loads of different genres, electronic atmospheres, soundscapes, all that stuff. And the more you hear, if you listen to Radiohead albums in order, you can just hear their sound progress. And I think, I genuinely think Muse have Radiohead to thank as a sort of inspiration of a British
It's like,
band.
is it like Radiohead made those weird experiments with sounds part of mainstream
Rock?
music?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And I think they played a big part in that.
Yeah.
but yeah, awesome. I mean, I've spoken about. Do you know the only other one thing I wanted to address was that you said about we were talking about. You said that they spent time on the album, and I think that's something to address
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
They recorded it between September 2002 and June 2003.
yeah,
That's a long process. That's like 8 months, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, we saw on the documentary, and what I'll do, guys, is I'll put the link to the documentary on YouTube in the show notes. So that'll be down there below for you. The whole documentary starts off with them recording the rhythm of Apocalypse Please, the intro, the dong down down down. They're recording that in many different places. You've got them in a small room jumping to create a sound on the floor. You've got them hitting a sheet of metal. You've got the drummer bringing the big bass drum, the orchestral bass, not the drum kit bass drum, an orchestral bass drum into a swimming pool and hitting it in time. And even with things like Time Is Running Out, they were all stood around a microphone clicking.
Yeah.
And you just see them all in a room clicking.
Maybe that's
That
what
is
makes
time.
the electronic part of it not sound like so electronic, because you always
You've
have an
got the
element
human
of,
element. Yeah.
yeah, like it's like someone tapping their feet or hitting a
Yeah.
random object. I think there's a video that one of them is hitting a music stand with a drumstick. It's
Yes.
like,
But
you
it's
have
just,
those metal music stands in studios for
yeah.
for the sheet
And they're
music,
clicking on it.
and it just, yeah, just like hitting,
But
and
this is
they're
what I'm
using
saying.
objects. Yeah,
You've got the modern side of electronic soundscapes and
yeah,
effects going very heavy on one side, but then you've got the human element on the other side of just normal
yeah,
clicks. It's
yeah,
brilliant, isn't it? Amazing.
yeah.
But yeah, that's all I wanted to say, is that it's obviously they took a very long time and to make everything perfect and to make everything right. But
I,
yeah, I
I
mean,
I just want to mention that, like, one of
yeah.
my favorite parts, I think my two favorite songs are one after another: Stockholm Syndrome and Falling Away with You.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yeah.
fact that you have something so heavy and the relentless drum beat with the toms on Stockholm Syndrome, and then after that you have something that sounds a bit folk on the intro. Falling Away with You, when it gets heavy, I didn't see that coming,
But it doesn't
really.
throw you off, does it? It
No, it
feels
was like, whoa, wait
natural.
a minute.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting this, because they do that a lot. But specifically in this song, it didn't sound like they would turn into a heavy song.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there is like a lot of unpredictable moments in the album, and that's, I think, what made me listen to it over and over. It's really good. I loved it. Thanks for choosing this one, because I wasn't familiar with the album.
That's no problem. You enjoyed it, yeah?
Oh yeah, I loved it.
Brilliant.
Great
That's awesome
stuff.
stuff. In terms of specifics in songs, I think I've said most of what I want to say.
Oh yeah.
I think songs like, a song like Hysteria, where
Oh
you've
yeah.
got everything. You've got a distorted, heavy bass riff. The song is still following that theme of doom and apocalypticness or whatever. Yet the chorus is just so accessible and so anthemic, and everyone around the world. I'm going to take that back because I'm exaggerating. A lot of people know that main because it's been used on like adverts for cars or something. Yeah, everyone hears it and goes, "Oh, I know that." And then you take it back. And I remember when I first heard that. I don't remember if we had Shazam back when I was, the app Shazam,
Yeah, I know.
where you do the thing. I had to have been something else I used, but anyway, I heard that the main hook, if you want to call it, of Hysteria, and when I played it, when I found that it's from Hysteria by Muse, when I played it, I thought this can't be the right song because it's not linking up. How can what I'm hearing at the start of this song be where the song goes? And I was very young, so I didn't obviously, understood that music can evolve and everything. But it's just so good. And then the chorus as well. Oh man, just some great songwriting. The only other thing I want to touch on is how heavy some of the album is.
Yeah.
And I think there's a line in general, not just Muse. I think there's a line between hard rock and heavy metal. And I think quite often on this album, Muse step over the line into the heavy metal side of it.
And they do it
Stockholm
sometimes
Syndrome,
like kind of out of the blue. It's not like the song starts heavy necessarily. They jump into that heaviness and then they go back to something else. It's really cool.
The other thing I wanted to mention is it's a particular I don't know what I'd call it, a musical quote that I love using, and I use it often to explain jazz. And those are two words: tension and release.
Yeah.
And the way I describe this in jazz is I say this: when you're hearing the stuff in jazz that's a bit, the odd notes, the notes that don't quite settle, what a jazz musician, and I'm generalizing, but it goes with the argument, it is a generalization of jazz, is that they create the tension in the jazz instruments by playing the notes that don't seem to fit, because in the next bar they're going to release that tension with
Like
notes
play
that do fit.
something predictable. Let's put it like
Exactly.
that. Something that
And
feels comfortable to listen to.
yeah, and I like the words tension and release with this album, because if you think of Stockholm Syndrome, you've got that the whole verse and the pre-chorus are very heavy, and then I'm just trying to think, how does it go into it? You've got the riff comes like da, 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 da. Even those notes, it's not dissonant, but it must be minor. It doesn't feel quite right. Da, 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 da. And it's not nice. And then suddenly, da, da, this, and it releases into the chorus. Is the last, and then the chords just holding slowly below it. I think they do it quite often on this album. Create tension, not in the way I'm talking about with jazz or dissonance or minor chords, but they create some form of oral tension and then release it in the form of a nice chorus or something. It's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant album.
Yeah, it is. And it's like it's almost like they have a formula, but still they can still surprise you.
And it does surprise you, doesn't it? It's like when you get halfway through the album, like Butterflies and Hurricanes, 3/4 of the way through, you think the song's over, and then you just get this piece of classical piano out of nowhere. And like we said at the start when we talked about this, it fits. It doesn't not work. It's brilliant. Brilliant stuff, man. Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on?
I think, to be honest, I just want to listen to the album again, and I want to recommend it to people. I think there's this is one of those albums that the second time we listen to is definitely not the same thing. I felt like the first time was disturbing. I had the same feeling with Awake by Dream Theater, which we also covered. And the show, when I first listened to it when I was younger, I felt quite disturbing and dark. But there's something about the second or third time around that just makes you enjoy it more. Just that's all I wanted to say.
It does, yeah. I mean, the only other thing I want to talk about is what this album did for Muse and their success, their fame, their trajectory. Commercially, this album saw, this album and songs of this album saw them break into the top 10. Time Is Running Out was a top 10 single for the first time in their career. Overall, the album achieved platinum success, higher chart position, and it really helped Muse break into the mainstream success and expand their fan base. And as Felipe said at the start, from then on, they can go and tour arenas. Critically, it was very, very welcomed and really, really well praised. It solidified their reputation as one of the important alt rock bands, alongside bands like Radiohead in the early 2000s, experimenting and showing what you can do. In terms of the diversification of their sound, they maintained a cohesive signature style, but yet drew on so many other inspirations: your Latin, your metal, your classical, your electronic, but still maintained a signature sound. It baffles me. I hear how much influence there is on this album, and I hear some so obviously classical sections, some so obviously Latin bossa sections, yet it still doesn't ever not sound like Muse.
I still think there's a lot to do with the vocals.
And you're right in thinking that. The only other part, hit singles, like I said, they broke into the top in the charts, top 10, means more plays on the radio, expanding a fan base.
Playing arenas after that.
Arenas, because the international success of the album, worked for them. Anything else you want to say, bro?
Well, I want to hear your monologue.
Of course, it's time for that, isn't it? Of course I do, yeah. So we'll go for that. We'll go for the monologue and then we'll call it a day there. So, Muse's Absolution, to me, is a fantastic example of how to encompass and integrate a multitude of musical styles and genres seamlessly whilst keeping an identity and signature sound in place. The ambition needed to combine the likes of classical and symphonic elements, metal heaviness and riffage, Latin rhythms and vibes, and electronic soundscapes and atmosphere with your standard hard rock bass is courageous and commendable. But to pull it off and execute it as brilliantly as Muse have is, in my mind, genius. With everything I've described and how I've described it, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this was a really niche, obscure, progressive album that wouldn't be in everyone's tastes. Yet we have accessible choruses, accessible riffs, and accessible hooks everywhere. Songs that did so well in terms of chart position and popularity upon release just goes to prove that. Musically, they have succeeded in everything they set out to do. The mix, the textures, the layers, the balance of styles, all perfectly executed. Lyrically, the album has an incredibly apocalyptic feel to start off with. Lots of tension and darkness create a haunting sensation that lingers over you throughout. However, some of this darkness is alleviated as we progress through, and the content of the songs starts to change from the initial apocalyptic doom and gloom to more of a questioning the meaning of life and existentialism. It really does take the listener on an introspective journey. Now, I'm not a massive fan of every song, and if I was being very critical, I feel like musically, Thoughts of a Dying Atheist and The Small Print are a little simplistic and out of place compared to the rest. But for the most part, I really, really, really enjoyed the album and felt totally immersed in it. From the grandeur opening piano chords of Apocalypse Please to the softer, haunting, dissipating end of Ruled by Secrecy. It truly is a sonic experience that plays with your mind and senses throughout, leaving me very impressed and in awe of the musical experience I've just been treated to. There you have it. Yeah, there you go. What an album. Now, I know I chose it, but we'll end with my question to you.
Yeah.
As a new listener to this album, because I feel like the question I'm about to ask you, I've answered in my monologue. As a new listener to this album, very quickly, have you heard much more Muse?
No, not really. Just like songs.
The hits, songs here and there. Okay.
Yeah.
As a new listener to this album, what is rock and roll about this album to you?
Oh, that they're not afraid of trying new sounds. I think that's what it is. And they also don't seem to care about the fact that there's nothing uplifting about the songwriting. You know what I mean? It's all dark, and I say that's acceptable in rock music, and nowhere else. Right?
But yet, as I've said, some of the songs could be I got to be careful what I say here. I'm not saying some of the songs are pop songs, but some of the songs were played on the radio to the levels of pop songs. Time is Running Out was played so much on radio. So was Hysteria. Yet it's dark, gloomy, and heavy with a distorted, fuzzy bass.
Yeah,
crazy.
And still a hit. Yeah, you know.
Oh, amazing!
It works. They're great.
There we go.
They deserve the success they have. You know, they deserve to be the band they are.
Yeah.
You know.
Excellent stuff. Right, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. As we say at the end of every episode, please get involved with us on our social media because it really helps us. You know, give us a like, comment, subscribe on YouTube.
Where can they find us?
You can find us. Wait, I've got to do the Felipe one, haven't I?
Yes.
You can find us on the internet. There you go.
Anywhere on the internet, just type.
Oh, so you want me to be specific now, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
no, anyway.
So all on the social medias, we are at Long Live RNR Pod. Just get involved. We always putting posts up and discussions and the little clips from the show. So let us know your thoughts on this album and anything we've said. If you say something if we say something you disagree with, let us know in the comments. We don't mind. In the end, it's all opinion, but it's just about chatting about the music we love. If you're listening to us on your podcast platforms, your Spotify, your Apple, 30 seconds of your time would be hugely appreciated if you would go and give us a review. You can hit the 5 stars if you think we're worthy of that, and one little sentence saying what you think of us would be really appreciated, as it helps us climb up the charts and will be seen by more people. So thank you very much for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for following us all this time. For you, if you're listening to us for the first time, thanks for being with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Keep on rocking, everyone.
And what's the second part of your new thing?
I need to say something else. I forgot, because that's a new thing. Keep on rocking and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
Yes, yeah. My favourite part.
The second part was yours.
You say a lot of awesome stuff on the show, but my favourite part is that signature line. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Every time myself and Felipe say goodbye in person or on the phone or here, he goes, "All right, lads, see you later. Don't do anything I wouldn't do." I love it. Again. I love it.
Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
And as usual, take care, guys, and long live rock and roll.